All right, Kenneth, can you state your name and tell me what court you're running for?
My name is Kenneth Newell, and I'm a candidate for judge of the 233rd District Court.
Okay, and why are you running for that office?
My purpose for running is out of a sense of service to our country, service to our community. When the current incumbent Bill Harris announced he would retire, I was faced with the question of, I wonder who would take that bench. And as that question played out, I thought of various other ones who I thought might run. Then the question continued to come, but later changed to, why not you? When it said, why not you, I began to think, and of course, first think of inadequacies in my own self, and said, well, that's not for me. But then honestly gave it an earnest consideration. My wife and I prayed about it, talked to some mentors about it, including current members of the judiciary, and felt that it was right for me. Having peace in my heart that this was what we were supposed to do. I say we, thinking of me and my wife and thinking of family. So from there, I made the decision that this is what we should do, and I want to help the families of Tarrant County to achieve their best version of themselves.
Okay, can you briefly describe your qualifications?
Qualifications, I think my qualifications comes in a couple of different ways. Of course, I am an attorney, meet the qualifications that the state has set out for a judicial position. I've been practicing family law, probate law, criminal law, various forms of law, should I say, various disciplines of the law since I was licensed, and I was licensed in 2011 after serving in the military for over 20 years. I got out and went to law school after that endeavor. I believe the military experience comes into play with me for doing this job in particular. And the reason I say that is I'm a Bronze Star veteran who served two combat tours. And during those times, you had the opportunity to work with people at their worst, if you will. You're dealing with people who you're asking to go into a dangerous situation that their lives may be in jeopardy, and you have to motivate, encourage, and help them to understand the purpose of why they're doing what they're doing. Now, of course, that is totally different than serving as a family judge, but then again, maybe not so much. When you look at the carnage sometimes that come out of a family law case, it is important to be able to, in my opinion, to help people find the best version of themselves. And I think that military background for me helps me to do that.
Okay, and what do you believe the proper role of government should be?
Proper role of government is to serve the will of the people. I believe our founders, when they founded America, they looked at the situation and said, wait a minute, do we want government to control us, or do we want to be a people who have a government that serves our needs? And I think that the decision was we want a government that serves our needs. When we say government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Thereby, the role of government should be limited. Our Constitution gives only those powers to the government that it outlines. They don't have broad sweeping powers. Those powers are designed to allow them to do certain things. So thereby, I believe the role of government is to serve the needs of the people, to do the things that the people have asked it to do, and not to overstep those bounds.
Okay. When and for what reason should state or local government be allowed to seize private property under eminent domain?
That's an interesting question because I've had an opportunity to work with entities in eminent domain. One job I had was I worked with the FAA. And I use them specifically when you say eminent domain because we use eminent domain to take property sometimes that were necessary for the national airspace. Obviously, we as American people don't want our planes falling out of the skies when we are aboard the plane, or our loved ones are aboard the plane, or people in general. So thereby, eminent domain was used in those scenarios or situations to make sure that the national airspace could be protected and our aviation could go properly through the air, or planes can go properly through the air. Situation like that, I think the use of it was proper. However, there are times that eminent domain has been proposed and sometimes used that may be more questionable. Recreational use, I think that's questionable. when you start talking about commercial use simply for the benefit of a few to make more monies or retail space, I think we could become questionable there. But when it's for safety purposes, when it's for the use of to make the public safe, to make the public better, to make us better, then eminent domain, I think, is a necessary tool of the government, but not something that should be used as, hey, we want this, or an individual want this, and let's give it to them.
Okay. Is Texas in need of civil asset forfeiture reform?
Is Texas in need of civil asset forfeiture reform? I think of that, and I'm thinking, how are we executing that right now? I'll have to say that I'm not very familiar with actions that are presently before any court or before any board of inquiry on that. So I guess I'd have to somewhat defer on that, because I don't have enough knowledge to speak to that intelligently.
What is your position on marriage rights?
Marriage rights are I talk to people, and I talk about this often, because when it comes down to marriage and the definition of marriage and rights within a marriage, that's one of my big things of why people have asked me, hey, why are you a Republican? Often when you look at me being a black man, I think that's what I'm supposed to be these days, black, African American, or whatever we are. When people ask me, why are you a Republican? Because they're always suspect on why am I a Republican candidate? And to me, that's one of my big things, is marriage rights. I believe that a man and woman should have the right to marry and to raise their families and to have the ability to make decisions concerning their families. When you start talking about other rights that people are asserting as marriage rights, well, I think a marriage finds its principles, or found its, should I say, its foundation in Judeo-Christian principles. And with that being the case, Judeo-Christian principles being the foundation for marriage, I think that's where we should look to define marriage. We talk about when a bill is passed, or when a law that is being questioned by the judiciary, then we're often able to look at the legislative intent of that law. Well, Judeo-Christian values are the basis for marriage, or is the basis for marriage. So why don't we look to Judeo-Christian principles to define the rights of a marriage and how those marriages should procreate, how those families should grow and develop. So my view of marital rights should be that they are based in Judeo-Christian values.
What are the top 3 issues for your campaign?
Top 3 issues in my campaign are best interests of the children, dignity of families, and overall compassion for the people that come before our bench. Best interests of the children, we have children coming before this bench all the time, and there are things that happen, and it is important that somebody stands up for the children. I'm a person from a large family, okay? I'm the 15th of 16 children, very large family. And being the 15th of 16 original children of my mother and father, you can imagine how important family is to me, or children are to me, and the rights of parents to raise those children in the way that they see fit, without the interference of, as we talked about earlier, government interference in that right. Then when we start talking about the dignity of families that come before the court, every family will have different values. Now, we cannot abide anyone abusing children or doing things that are wrong legally, or abusing individuals within a marriage relationship. But at the same time, every culture, every family, every group has different values and norms that they hold dear. And they need to be able to be represented in our courts. They need to be able to come to the judiciary, come to the court, and know that somebody in that judicial situation or that judicial branch is going to understand that, hey, my values or my culture is going to be represented. And somebody's going to understand when we do a thing, that it's maybe good, or one may consider it good, another may consider it bad, but it needs to be understood. And finally, when we start talking about compassion, this is a family court, not a criminal court. Too many times people come before courts and they walk away with a lot of carnage. They walk away hurt. Kids are afraid to go to mom and hug them and say, I love you, in the presence of their father, because they're afraid that the father won't like them. And then the opposite is also true. Somewhere along the way, we have to give the message to families that it's okay. You're separating, but you're still a family. There's still a lot that goes forward and need to come forward in who you are and what you can produce in the lives of your children and everyone beyond that. Because the relationships are not just mother-father, not just parent-children, not just siblings, not just fictive kin and blood relatives, but it is everybody involved, the whole community. As we say, it takes a village to raise a child, but at the same time, we have to understand that compassion that is needed to put forth positive impacts on our children is necessary from the bench and from the courts, because so many families end up in court and they don't want to be. And to this end, it is necessary that these families walk into court and receive compassion from the judiciary, to them, knowing that it's okay to rebuild their lives, knowing that it's okay to, this part is over, or that maybe this relationship as we've known it is over, but it's okay to build a new one. When I talk of compassion, I think of this. There's no greater compassion than a person willing to lay down his life for a friend, is what Scripture tells us. Well, with that, I've laid down my life or put my life in jeopardy twice in 2 wartime events. I believe I've, to that level, have experienced a degree of compassion for the people of this United States. And I believe that I can convey that compassion from the bench and make sure that the right thing is done, legally as well as morally and ethically.
Now, I did hear you say, in the best interest of the child, the Tarrant County Family Courts have in the past, amongst other practitioners, had a reputation for being more sided toward the mother than the father in a divorce custody case. Now, I know it's dependent on who's on the bench. How would you reconcile that being in the best interest of the child with a perceived bias in the family courts?
I couldn't reconcile a perceived bias. I couldn't say that there's a need for a mother greater than the need of a father. I think that they are both parents equally. And I've seen in my practice, I've seen it in my life, I've seen it in various ways to where one role in this family is different than the role in the next family. Because a mother is a stay-at-home mom in this family and may spend a lot of time with the children and may be the primary caregiver, that's not always the case in the next family. Each family, each case has to stand on its own merits. And as a judge, I will look at each case for what it presents and hopefully make the right decision concerning that family based on the facts. The fact that a mother is the mother does not mean that she loves the child more, because, and I respect mothers. Like I say, my mother bore 16 children. But not only did my mother bear 16 children, my father fathered 16 children. And they were side by side and worked together in that endeavor. And yes, I know mothers do more of the hard work up front, and not dismissing that at all. But I think that the bias that we've had is something that I think we've come to understand, that it's a shared endeavor, and each case has to stand on the facts of that case. If the facts say mother should have more time or should be in a superior position, then we follow the facts. If the facts say the father, we follow the facts.
The top 3 things that make you more qualified than your opponent?
That's a question that I can't answer. Because my opponent is running the race she feels she should run. I'm running the race that I feel that I should run. What makes me qualified to run? I say that what makes me qualified to run is the fact that, one, of course, legally, I've met the legal qualifications. Morally, believe, there aren't any prescribed moral qualifications other than the fact that, of course, we want all of our citizens to be upright and upstanding. We want all of our people to do what's right. There's a scripture that says, what is it that God asked of us? And it is to do justice and to walk upright and humbly before our God. That is what, in my opinion, brings me to this place, to walk upright and do what's right for the people. Why am I more qualified than my opponent? In my opinion, that's not my place to determine. I have to defer that question to the voter, and I make my case for why I should be here, the things that I've said, and allow her qualifications to stand for who she is.
Okay. Please describe your political experience as well as experience as an election volunteer, staffer, candidate, or office holder, and any names of any candidates or office holders that you've worked for or volunteered.
That I would have to say, in all of those categories, I've not had the pleasure of doing so. Like I say, I've spent a lot of my career and time serving in other ways, and those other areas of service being military service. Once I got out of the military, started going to law school, finished that, and have built up my practice as a solo practitioner. Now, what I've tried to do, although I've not been able to serve and help in political campaigns, but is to serve the people in general by offering them quality service as an attorney, and also trying to keep my rates lower usually than the average person, so that I can hopefully take care of the litigants there. But as far as being able to volunteer in political campaigns, I've not had the opportunity, though I've had a great desire, because obviously serving in the military and being on the end of following regulations and laws that were set up, I've had a great interest in those things, but this is my first opportunity to get involved.
And lastly, would you like to tell the voters anything about yourself?
Well, as I've said, my name is Kenneth Newell, and I'm a candidate for judge of the 233rd District Court. I've already mentioned several things about me, but I describe myself as a Christian husband, father, attorney, adjunct professor, and a Bronze Star veteran. I served our country for over 20 years, and I served honorably and was able to, as I mentioned, obtain a Bronze Star, not just for my efforts, but for the efforts of the people who work with me in that endeavor. I'm a person who believes in doing what's right, doing because it's right, and then doing it right. My purpose here is to serve the will of the people, and that being to follow the laws of the state of our Constitution, the state of Texas, and of course the Texas Family Code and those other laws that correspond with that. My whole purpose is to do what's right. I ask for your support to allow me to do that, to show compassion, to show that the best interest of the children has to be respected, and to make sure that people who come before my court are heard, not put down, not made to feel like second-class citizens, because the people coming before family court are good people. And not that all people coming before all courts aren't good people, but as we said, the old adage is family court is the worst of society, or the best of society at their worst, where criminal court is often the worst of society performing at their best. I want to take care of our society, the best of our society, in the way that they deserve to be taken care of, with compassion and with great grace. If you have any or would like to look up any additional information on me, I invite you to my website, kennethforjudge.com, and my Facebook page, Kenneth Newell for Judge.
Okay, thank you for coming in.